Yes, if horses had hands, they would do so.
Right. So this is a critique of the anthropomorphic representation of the gods, which was common in the popular Greek religion of the time. I think it's something that serious theologians today have transcended, but is still in some respects part of some people's conception of what God is like. This is some kind of wise old man with white hair and a beard sitting up there in the heavens somewhere. Xenophanes himself was a theist. What he did proposed as a replacement for this anthropomorphic, polytheistic, morally disreputable picture of the gods was to propose the idea of a single God. God is one, greatest among gods and men, not at all like mortals in body or thought. All of him sees, all of him thinks, all of him hears. Without effort, he shakes all things by the thought of his mind. So this is actually a kind of a purification, a theological purification of the popular conceptions of the gods. He doesn't actually give any argument for the existence of such a being, or for there being only one, nor does, in what way survives, do we have any kind of account of how it could be that a being not at all like mortals in body or thought could, without effort, shake all things by the thought of his mind. So these are rather problematic in terms of any kind of support for them. And interestingly enough, in a passage that I haven't quoted here, he is very cautious about whether this is something that he really knows. So he makes a general point that we can't be sure of our beliefs. So there is a note, despite the somewhat dogmatic sound of this last quotation, of intellectual humility, which is, I think, a welcome note to sound. So I'm going to stop at this point and just ask if any of you have any clarifications or any comment you'd like to make just now. Yes?
I just wonder at the mention of the Ethiopians having the flat nose, whereas in fact any Ethiopians that I've seen have been very sharp-featured people looking like Europeans.
I don't. That's quite true. Ethiopians and Somalians, from that, don't have those kinds of noses. So I'm not quite sure why Ethiopians would describe. Xenophanes would describe them that way. Does anybody else know? Do you know?
Well, I would suggest that maybe he's not quite sure who is an Ethiopian and who is something else.
Yeah.
But I had a question actually for you on a different topic.
Sure.
I was just wondering if you could talk about why people believed in gods rather than the fact that some people did. Have you looked it up at why people?
That is actually one of the questions that a number of thinkers considered, and I have some quotations about why people believe in gods, some of which are imply that there are no gods, and others of which are compatible with there being gods, but they're giving some kind of a naturalistic explanation. So this is indeed one of the issues that is being discussed, but I'll come to it when I get there.
Have you considered it yourself?
I have. I don't have any personal position on why people believe in God or gods, except to point out the obvious fact that most people who believe in a god or gods were told at a very early and impressionable age that there was one, and that
I'm not speaking of individuals in this age. I'm talking about why the Greeks. There's a section in, I think it's the Republic, where Plato discusses the God that must be worshipped in the Republic. and the nature of the God. There's no suggestion that the God need exist, but it has to be defined, and people
Right.
have to be ordered to worship it.
Right.
Now that, I
So-
think
so-
more along that line.
To say that, you know, most people are told when they're impressionable young children that there is a God or there are gods, of course doesn't answer the question of how the belief arose in the first place, because that just pushes it back one generation. So I'll come to that. We're going to get there. Yes.
Along the same lines, do we know what the average Greek citizen of 500 BCE actually thought about these gods? Was it a kind of mythical stories, or did they seriously believe that Zeus lived on Mount Olympus? What was the actual standard belief at the time?
We may know, but I don't know. One of the difficulties, of course, is that, you know, people were not doing surveys of public opinion in those days. One of the clues to beliefs about the afterlife is the sort of thing that gets said at funeral orations and so on. Now that's a little bit to the side of the issue of whether people really believe these stories. But it's quite clear from the kind of criticism that you see in Xenophanes and in other figures, including Plato, and Heraclitus is another one, that thoughtful people who were writing about this were skeptical about these stories. And I would say also that one of the features of ancient Greek civilization was that there was no enforcement of dogma. Plato, in fact, is peculiar in recommending that there be enforcement of dogma. What was required is that you participate in the civic rituals and you know, that you sort of acknowledge at least the god of the goddess of the city. But what beliefs went along with that, as far as I can tell, there was not a huge amount of specification of that or requirement of that. And in fact, one of the characteristics of ancient Greece, which I think helps to explain why it was there that philosophy and science and free inquiry originated, is that there wasn't a kind of priestly control of the civilization. In fact, what you had is a lot of small, independent city-states, more than 100 of them, each of whom had, you know, their own way of doing things. So I think there was a freedom to take all of this with a grain of salt, and people did. As to how many did and how many didn't, I don't know. Okay, yes?
You do indeed mention right here free inquiry. And you say that there was some free inquiry in that doctrine. There was free inquiry. How do you know that? I mean, how?
Well, we have.
What leads you to suppose this?
No, we have testimonies and quotations of thinkers from in the 500s BCE, it's the 6th century BCE, who put forward accounts of the origin of the cosmos that made no reference whatsoever to the gods.
Can I ask what year you made this
The earliest
year?
one was a guy named Thales who predicted an eclipse that took place in 585 BCE. So he evidently was thinking about this, you know, early in that century. You don't have a precise year.
I'm not asking for precise.
Yes. So, and these are complete inventions. I mean, there's nothing in the tradition that's anything like this. And the method of, for example, one of the